Hi Chris, how are you?
Good evening, Rod. Yeah, I'm okay. Here we are. It's Monday the 9th. It's 7:45 at night and we've just watched the Apple WWDC keynote. So we're recording a bit later than usual, aren't we? And we thought we'd do it after the keynote rather than before because it might give us some content. And I think we largely started talking about Apple stuff, so we thought we'd continue it this week.
Yeah, I think it's only right to do so. We're still primarily an Apple podcast. Hopefully we're appropriately critical of them. I think you've been, as usual, more optimistic than me leading up to this, and my skepticism stays strong. But I think just before we get into it, and we've got a lot to talk about. Well, we've got a bit to talk about. You better tell us what the weather's like where you are.
I was just looking out the window. I don't know what to call it. Overcast, bit of a breeze. Not raining though, so all right.
Typical British weather, I'd say.
British summer.
British summer right there. Yeah, exactly the same here. Overcast, not particularly cold, but out of the sunshine and stuff, a little on the nippy side. That's the best I could describe it.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yep. So, should we crack on? Have we said the date? The date?
Yeah, so it's episode 176 and it's the 9th of June. So we're not going to do follow-up. We're not going to do all the usual car corners and media and news, but all the stuff we've been watching, I think all the TV shows we're watching are still really good and people should carry on watching them.
They absolutely should. They're all good. Music's good. Apps are good. All their favourite sections will be back next week. App of the week, thing of the week. But this week, it's all about WWDC.
Yeah, let's get into it. So WWDC is Apple's worldwide developer conference. For the people that don't know, it used to be very developer orientated, but now the first keynote, and it's usually on a Monday morning about 10 o'clock on American time. Well, West Coast time. Get my coast right around. And the first keynote at 10, usually about 90 minutes to 2 hours long, is just an overview of all the major changes they're going to do this year, usually to all the OSs, all the operating systems, so everything from your phone to your watch to your TV, your Mac, etc. And then they do a more technical one, which will happen probably in about an hour and a half or so now. And that's really for the developers where they get into the meat and bones of it. But we were just going to do a whistle-stop tour, I think, around all the OSs.
Yeah, so we're not going to do State of the Union. That'll be deeper details we can dive into next week probably. Plus all the undoubted backlash, new discoveries, all the rest of it will happen, not in the middle of our hot takes as you're about to get now, really. So, let's dive in and do it. So, straight off, it's probably worth mentioning, things aren't all calm in California. There's been some rioting going on. Initially peaceful. I think there's been some other stuff happening as well. And Apple's holding its big developer conference right in the middle of that. Didn't say anything about that. Not surprising, it's pre-recorded. But really didn't say anything about any of the stuff we've been talking about up to this, did they? Yeah,
which I think you were more optimistic on that point than I, but they didn't acknowledge the room whatsoever, whether it's the legal battles that have happened and they're obviously trying to appeal where they've had to allow people to do breakout links to make purchases, or whether it's just developers feeling a bit annoyed. They've just carried on with the usual WWDC keynote. Whether they do more in the in the more techie one, I don't know, which is developer orientated, but they've seemed to have just not read the room at all. In true Apple fashion, they've just ploughed on.
Yeah, I guess they sort of weather it. Where are these people going to go? They belong to us now. Despite the fact they did a really odd sort of piano piece with developer reviews at the end, they didn't do their usual humorous, it's all about the devs thing as they normally do. Like they all jumped out of a plane or virtually jumped out of a plane last year and all that kind of stuff. They've done, reviews and money they've paid back to them before, but none of that was acknowledged at all, was it?
No, they normally have something jokey, but yeah, none of that. Instead, what did we get?
Well, we started off with a sort of basically a trailer for F1, so that's the big film Apple are putting out there. It looked like it was Brad Pitt racing in the virtual-ish car that they've got as part of the F1 film, which is coming out soon, but it turned out to be Craig Federighi racing around the top of Apple Park.
Yeah, so Brad Pitt's the main star of the F1 film. The film comes out towards the end of June, sort of 25th, 26th, here in the UK. And they basically had the racing car going around the top of the Apple Donut, which is quite a cool effect and quite a cool use of those two things, their physical property and obviously the film that they've made. I thought that was all right.
It was all right. They had Tim speaking to him like he was a pit boss. He took his helmet off. He had even bigger helmet hair than Craig has normally got. So they really push on that hair thing.
They are leaning into the character, aren't they, a little bit there, I think. But I think he quite likes it.
Yeah, and then there was a bit of a more proper nod towards the F1 trailer, and Apple TV is good. All the content is good. And that was pretty much it from Tim. It's good. We've got a packed show in front of us. It's all about, all of our operating systems, and then they launched into it.
Which is, I think, right. I don't think Tim is I don't mind Tim, but he's not the person to be doing that, I think.
He is not the person to be doing that, no. So, for those watching the YouTube, we're going to try and have something up at the same time, but we'll have to see how that goes because this stuff is still breaking as we go along.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to pre-prepare, isn't it?
A lot harder to pre-prepare, and particularly when they take away the event for you, just as you're
if you just go to the... Yeah, you got it. So on the homepage of apple.com, which is quite a different look this year, they've actually got a whole bit for WWDC and explaining what's in all of the new OSs, and you can scroll left and right. And at the top where you just were, you've got the different, OSs at the top.
Yeah, so that's fine. We got it to hand. So as Apple did, should we start with iOS?
Yeah, why not? I mean, iOS is the flagship, isn't it?
It is the flagship. So the big sort of news for all of the OSs this year, well, there's two, isn't there? One is they've got liquid glass. That's what they're calling the new design, which basically is a bunch of transparencies and even more rounded rectangles. I don't think I'm being too frivolous by saying that. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that is fair. I think we were led to believe this was going to be a massive redesign, massive, but it feels like it's more of a tweak. I've said to you just before we recorded, I watched this with one of my teenage sons, and he said, it doesn't look all that. And actually, he as you can see on the screen for those watching, the one where you can now have translucent icons just looks weird. I don't really know how to explain it. But they've basically redesigned all the OSs to have some familiarity between them, which does make some sense, I think, especially where users of different generations maybe go from their phone to their Mac, because that is the common one. I think most people have a phone and a Mac. It does make some sense they're doing it, but it's not quite as major as we were led to believe, I think. And it doesn't feel as major as the iOS 7 redesign that came, where they literally changed every graphic and icon and it was wildly different. There's a lot less of that this time.
I still think it's going to upset people. I mean, in the same way I remember iOS 7 as people going, how do I find X, Y, or Z? This is going to do the same thing. Icons are different. For example, if you look at the mail icon, it's a very different looking icon to what came before. It barely looks like an envelope anymore, which is fine. Email isn't snail mail, but they have redesigned the icons. They have got those different looks. You can tint your icons in the way that you could actually go, where are we? iOS 18, I think, is the current version that we're currently on. 26 is going to make me forget this really quickly. And that's the other big news, is all the OSs are now 26.
Which we knew was coming and makes lots of sense, especially where you had watchOS, whatever version we were on, iOS and macOS. They were all different key numbers. So I think that's really good that they've tightened that one up. It makes a lot of sense.
I mostly agree. I think it's right for everything except visionOS, which has also jumped to 26 from version 1.5 or possibly 2. I don't even know what it was on.
I think it was on 2.
Okay, so it's gone from 2 to 26, which is quite the leap forward for, well, we'll come at visionOS, but
yeah. It makes sense, doesn't it, though? Because, these things generally get features on a par with each other, so it makes sense. I think that they're more in lockstep. So that was a big tick. I think they've harmonised the version numbers. Done. The new look looks, I don't know, I'm not that excited by it, I must confess, but I think I want to go and play with it because I think it doesn't look great in some of the videos or the screenshots, so I think it's one that you need to get it on your device and try it out.
I think that's entirely fair. I mean, maybe this is more appetizing when you actually get it under your fingers as much as anything else. That made much of the fact that this was glass, it was layered. There were some really weird graphics on the table when they were demonstrating it, like CGI glass elements layered on top of the table as the designers were sort of coming up with the idea for the sort of liquid glass look. Didn't like it at all. Don't think it landed very well. But that's what they're going for, is that all these layers sort of slide on top of each other, so it feels a bit more real under your fingers when you're using these sort of virtual displays with popovers. And I felt many hints back to, well, obviously visionOS, which is where some of this stuff comes from, but iPadOS with sort of the touch bars that move around on the screen all the time. There was a lot of hints towards that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And we get to iPadOS. They've done a lot with iPadOS, but that video was odd. I think how they were talking about how your screens are going to look, but yet they've got these 3D glass elements. That just didn't. It just felt really bizarre to me. But on the whole, I think what they're trying to do makes sense. I'm not sure about some of the implementation.
Yeah, just because you can unify all the things doesn't mean you need to unify all the things.
And we use our devices for very different things. You use your watch for a very different use case than when you sit down and record a podcast on your Mac.
Yeah, We better crack on or we'll just get stuck on this all the time. So they started with 26 all the things. The new lock screen is there, which really isn't that all different. I mean, I didn't see any sort of tweaks to notifications or anything. All they really talked about were slightly more dynamic wallpapers and things for putting clocks behind, elements that you've got on a picture. They have a new resizable time widget. So if you go from one wallpaper that's up near the top of the screen to one that's sort of closer to the bottom, the clock sort of expands to fill the gap behind that. And I suppose it's vaguely clever, but I don't actually see anybody who's clamoring for that sort of level of tweakiness on their lock screen.
I'd agree with you. I think, to be fair with them, though, I think they've done a pretty good job with the lock screen when they brought out the latest incarnation we got a couple of years ago. What was good though is that if you're listening to music and it's got animated album art, you can see that now full screen. I think that's quite cool as somebody that listens to a lot of Apple Music. Hopefully that's available to Spotify as well.
Well, I would hope so. I mean, the problem with all these things, as with the spatial audio, is it often requires the artist or the record label or whoever to go back and do that. You don't just get it as a gimme. So there might be a couple of blessed artists that Apple have sort of settled on as having this to begin with, but presumably somebody needs to go back and create that animated album art. Otherwise, you're just whatever's in your lock screen. It's not going to do it for you, is it?
No, it's not going to do it for you, but there are quite a lot of albums, even old albums, where they have gone back and animated them. So I think Apple have been pushing animated album art in Apple Music for a while, so quite a lot of bands do have it. And like I say, even old albums from 20 or 30 years ago. So I think it is something that is out there, and it's mixed on whether people have used it, but it's quite cool.
Equally, if you've got spatial photos, then they try and apply that element as well. They sort of try to show a vaguely 3D element of a dog coming out of the screen. Again, it's very difficult to say how well that kind of thing works without actually getting your hands on the OS. So maybe it was good. I don't know.
Yeah, and obviously the photos they have, they're made for this, whereas, is a regular person going to be able to go and get that picture of their dog or their cat and make it work in that way. So it looked cool, nothing major there.
So that was it for the lock screen. I mean, for me, it's disappointing they didn't do something about notifications. For me, iPhone notifications just sort of flood in from the bottom. There's very little in the way of management of them. I know you can do things if you sort of partially slide them out of the way, but it's not very explicit. It's not very discoverable. And Apple could do better. They should look and copy some stuff off Android for the way you can manage notifications in Android, because we're all drowning in notifications. I know there's a move to silencing more and more apps, but even if you silence them, you're still getting news, you're still getting weather, you're still getting text, you're still getting WhatsApps, you're still getting whatever from people. And I just don't feel the management of them is perfect on iOS. And this is a polish. This isn't major updates to any of these, except possibly iPadOS. Major updates to any of these OSs, really. There's some sort of core feature updates. And notifications is something that really needs work on the iPhone as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'd agree there. So I largely turn off all my notifications, and I just generally go into apps when I want to go look at something. But when I help people with their phones, most people have just got a whole, hundreds of them, and they're just bankrupt with notifications. They just don't use them anymore. So I'm surprised there's nothing there.
Yeah. They went into the Photos app, had almost nothing to say, except they've kind of gone back to the previous design. Obviously, the design they launched last year didn't land very well, and they've more or less gone back to where we were 2 years ago.
Yeah, they have dialed it back in a bit. I actually quite like the Photos app. I must confess I've come around to it. But for me, I've just got used to it, I guess. But they have dialed it back a bit, and they did make a little reference towards that.
Yeah, they did. FaceTime gets personalised contact photos. Not something I was clamouring for, but I guess it makes it look a little bit better.
Yeah, there's a little bit on FaceTime. I just don't use FaceTime that much, I must confess.
Yeah, fair. I mean, we don't even use it for the podcast. We did try. They moved then on to CarPlay. They talked a little bit about CarPlay Ultra, and they showed an Aston Martin on the screen, but that's very niche, and we talked about that. There's nothing new to add in CarPlay Ultra. There were some small refinements, like you can now have widgets within CarPlay should your developer support it. I guess that's good. It's potentially more distracting.
I'm just happy it's got a lick of paint, if I'm being honest with you, because I quite like CarPlay, and it was just frustrating that they'd done so little with it. So for me, I just think the fact they've done something with CarPlay is good, because it just looked a bit dated compared to everything else.
So things like if you get a call while you're getting directions, the call now won't take over the screen, and stuff like that. You'll get a minimized look of it, and that's fine. That's the kind of refinement that when I think about it, why wasn't that there already?
Yeah, and it now looks a bit glassy, and it supports dark mode, and I think that's all good. I think that's
tweaking.
Yeah, just tweaking.
They then moved to the phone app. You've now got a unified view of your calls, your FaceTime, and your messages all against people's contacts. That's quite good, I think. What was the last interaction I had with this person? It was a message. It was a FaceTime call. That's quite helpful. And then integrated with those sort of new contact posters and things like that. I think that's quite good. Sort of a more unified contact/phone interface rather than just I go in here for my phone app. The ability to see the last sort of communication you had with people, I think, is really useful.
Yeah, so if you scroll halfway down, we can see some pictures. It's under communication. I think what's good here, though, is to see them actually do something with the phone app, because it felt like for a long time, they did touch a bit of it last year, but some of the screens date back, to 15 years, it felt like. And and I wonder whether they were scared to touch the phone app. But it does feel like they've actually rewritten most of the app, and maybe they've properly made it swift and really modernized it, and it's got modern spacing. And it looks great. I think it's really nice that they've done a little bit to it. Makes a lot of sense.
Yep, I think it's fair. It's something that needed an update. Like you say, it hasn't been touched in years. The sort of big features for this, apart from that, was call screening. So that potentially the phone can answer and screen calls for you from spam calls and then give you notification about that. And hold assist was the other thing, which is if the phone recognizes hold music, that must have a library of particular hold music that it recognizes being a thing, it can then message you when your call is actually picked up. They didn't say whether that was just an entirely AI feature or something that needs carrier support, so I'm slightly in the dark about that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how much are they doing and how much do they need, like you say, carriers to do it. But fair play to them, because I generally think it's really good that they're doing this, because it is a problem, isn't it? I've noticed it certainly with my children and my parents. They're getting a lot of spam calls, and they're sometimes following what the people say. So I think this can only be a good thing.
Yep, we also got, I think that was it for the phone, but moving on, we've got messages. You can now apply backgrounds to particular chats. If you apply a background to a group chat, for example, everybody gets the background. I wonder how popular that will be if you've got lots of people in a chat and you sort of inflict your sports team of choice in there, or, a driver you like in Formula One rather than somewhere else. I could see that leading to lots of swap backgrounds in particular things.
But isn't this just a WhatsApp feature that's now... I'm not a WhatsApp user, as people may know. This just feels like a WhatsApp feature. And again, a bit like the phone app, it feels like messages just got a little bit left behind. And actually, there's a lot of things happening out in the world, and Apple had missed them. So I think it's good they're doing it. I quite like the sound of it. And you can see it now, like some backgrounds. You'll probably put a funny photo of your mate on there or something. I think it's cool.
Yep, they're just catching up with the other messaging apps, WhatsApp, Telegram, Signal. They all do this kind of stuff. Equally, they've put polls in there now, so you can poll right in the app. You can see people responding live time. Slack, Teams, all messaging apps do this kind of thing. Well done. It's a shame it took such a big OS update, really, to get this in there. This is something that should have been released as a point release 3 years ago.
Yeah, I wish Apple would get out of that they've got to keep everything for this big update. And they have done a little bit, but I wish they'd get even more out of it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a year like this even more obvious when they're not really doing very much for this kind of stuff. That they've changed the look of it, but the way that it's working, not that big a deal. The spam detections in messages as well. So if you're getting messages from the senders you don't recognize, it can sort of unify your message inbox to the spam ones, deliveries that are left on your doorstep, and you're able to break in and pull them out of there if you want to. It looked relatively well done, I think.
Yeah, I think I quite liked all of it. Like I say, I think messages and phone, I think they've done a good job.
Yep. They then went into a section that I think was called messaging richness, which I thought was a really weird thing. And this was like Apple Intelligence bits and stuff like that they tried to sort of crowbar in. So they showed a demo of some absolutely terrible ability to merge two emojis together, which is just Genmoji, isn't it?
It's just Genmoji with Image Playground. So it's probably like two things I've never really used mangled together. So yeah, you can have two Genmoji icons and go... take those two icons and make me one picture. So it could be a guy in a tweed suit with a cocktail, for example, and they're separate icons and you can merge them together. It didn't seem that exciting.
It really didn't seem that exciting. It was very, very dull indeed. You get Image Playground support now in ChatGPT. There was none of the Google Gemini that we were rumoured to be getting.
Surprised by that.
Yeah, they're still sort of fairly thick with ChatGPT, and that came up a couple of times, integrations with ChatGPT over the course of the keynote. For those watching the podcast, you can see an example of the style ChatGPT with the stork that they showed there. I mean, none of the Apple Intelligence features, as we've said repeatedly on this podcast, are particularly useful anyway. And it shows its limitations when you're immediately going, okay, year 2, we're integrating with ChatGPT because our stuff hasn't set the world on fire.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I turn Apple Intelligence on is just because I like the animation that lights up the outside of the screen, I must confess. Other than that, I don't need the rest of it.
Yeah, mine's been off for 6 months and I haven't noticed it. As part of this comes with an API for developers, and they pushed across a lot of the apps live translation as being a really useful thing. So that's in Messages, FaceTime, the phone app, all that kind of stuff. Even in their advert, I noticed but their sort of spoiler reel for what's coming. There was quite a delay in the translation from them translating into, I think it was French in the first example. Quite a delay between them speaking to it and that actually being received by the person, and then playing the different voice. So you hear the speaker's voice and then you hear the translation. And fair enough, you're translating, you're going to expect a bit of a delay, but it seemed like quite a long delay.
Yeah, and look, I live quite a shouted life, so I don't actually use a lot of translation tools. But yeah, it did feel a little bit of delay. It's clever, but even in their video, they managed not to hide the delay, which was interesting. I guess at least they're being honest.
Well, it's better than last year when all these Apple Intelligence features that were coming later were just flat out lies and vaporware.
That is a fair point.
So I think maybe they've just decided to suck it and see a little bit this year.
Yeah, potentially. I did listen to some podcasts. They did wonder whether they were going to have like disclaimer text at the bottom of some of their videos going, this is functionality that hasn't fully been, developed yet, maybe, because obviously they've got into hot water with that.
Probably not a bad thing. They went into services. Some of these were laughably short, I thought, considering they've had many years to think about them. The first one being music, so you'll get lyrics translation, which I guess might be interesting if you're listening to, I'll show my ignorance of world music here, Gangnam Style or Tinarwen or someone like that, and you want a live translation for what they're saying, then you can have that. That's great. They then had a feature called Auto Mix, which is like seamlessly going from one song to another, and I genuinely thought they already did that.
Yeah, it did feel like that's something I've already got. I'm a big Apple Music listener, as you know. None of the features they showed made much sense to me. I just want them to update the app so it feels... I always get to the app and I don't know where to go because I find the now playing screen a bit odd. I think it's a bit disappointing that they've done so little with Apple Music.
Yeah, I'm with you. They could have done a lot more with this. It's quite an important app for Apple. It's one of the tentpole features of the Apple services. If you're going to go for a subscription, people want the music, and they're so up against it with Spotify and some of the competition and their lack of features. This is a bit... I mean, the only other thing they had in music was music pins, so you can put your most popular listened playlists or albums up at the top of that, and that's slightly weak sauce, really.
Yeah, they kind of have that, though, because you can have your favourites already, so I don't know. That just seemed another way of doing something very similar that they've already got, which seems to be the theme of today's event. Absolutely.
They then moved on. They did maps. They've now got preferred routes in maps, apparently with a bit of Apple Intelligence magic. It will learn your routine. So if there's sort of a delay on your normal routes, you can then pin out a new widget to your phone, and it will give you an overview of what's going on there. Or if you stop for coffee, it sort of can learn that as you go along. I'll be really interested to see how well this works, because I don't have a lot of faith in something like this.
Now, I'm going to sound really naive here, but I thought they already had that.
Clearly not.
I thought that was already a feature, that they would remember your route to work, and it just felt like they were reusing it again.
Yeah, to me, that only ever is you get a, go to work, go to home sort of destination as a quick key in your map.
Yeah, so it feels a bit of a theme of tonight's podcast, tonight's video. Of a lot of the things I think you and I have seen, we're like, I thought we already had that. And it's a bit worrying. I know they've been busy and they've got lots of engineers, and it is hard to spin all these different OSs and plates. But it's more worrying, I think. A lot of the things they're touting as new feel like we've already had them before.
We give them that excuse every year, but they're the biggest, richest company in the world, and the basis of all these OSs is the same. The Mac kernel and all this kind of stuff that forms the basis of Mac OS has been the same since its inception. They used to boast about the fact that iOS was basically the same as Mac OS. So it's not that hard, is it?
And they've had years to consolidate and deal with it, and they're the ones that have made all these different OSs over the years, and have hence made the tools to bring them back together. So I would agree with you, but yeah, I don't know. You're right, we do give them that excuse every year.
We do give them that excuse every year, and they've got all the money in the world. They could do better.
They do have all the money.
We've got some nice transparent stuff. Let's not be too cynical. Let's stick with some of the stuff. They also added very quickly to maps visited places, which is a bit like Foursquare. I was a big Foursquare user back in the day. So if you couldn't remember the name of the coffee shop or something like that, then, you could go back and scroll in your history and do it. But I presume that's something you need to opt into.
Yeah, I think you do, because there's probably a privacy thing there as well. I quite like that. I think it all sounds good. I'm a big Maps user, so this all sounds great to me.
Yeah, I am a big Maps user, but my car uses Google Maps. So, and the integration between my car and just using Google Maps is really good. If I'm I was planning to go to an event on last Friday, I just looked at it once in the map and it was at the top of my screen when I got in the car next time. I just tapped it and off I went. And that sort of integration is incredibly helpful.
Apple Maps does do that. But,
but my car doesn't support Apple Maps.
Yeah, that is the problem. They should have done what I referenced Netflix. What Netflix did, just got it everywhere. But Apple, for whatever reason, haven't done that with Apple TV or with Maps.
So that was Maps. They then moved on to Wallet. They briefly talked about keys, that more auto manufacturers are going to support keys. I feel that's a bit disingenuous. That's not so much about Apple supporting car keys as NFC and Bluetooth working together. I forget the name of the actual technology. Ultra wideband. Bluetooth ultra wideband is the technology that enables car manufacturers to do this. So Apple have a march on this because more iPhones support ultra wideband than Android devices do. But that's just the technology. It's not specifically Apple Wallet.
Yeah, again, the wallet I don't think has really brought anything major here. But it's a bit disappointing. I said to you jokingly, why can't it just let me reorder the order of my cards? That's all I want to do with it, because I want all my points cards together, my bank cards together, but you can't. They're just in the order they got added in, which feels like something we would have written in an app at uni. Yep, it works, ship it. And I'm amazed we haven't got any of that functionality.
Yeah, reordering should be obvious, shouldn't it? They added more states supporting digital ID, obviously something that affects Americans, and that's useful for them. They also support better support for the digital American passport, which they then said won't replace your actual passport. So now you've got it in two places. That's not terribly useful, really, is it?
But I guess it's one of these things. It's playing the long game, isn't it? At some point, it will change, I'm sure. But until then, this is what they've got to do. I'd love to have my driving license in there. Hopefully, the UK will. We'll get that at some point.
Yeah, but across platform. And this is something that shouldn't just be limited to Apple platforms.
It should be in every wallet, I completely agree.
Absolutely. And then better boarding passes with interior maps. So presumably if you're in a boarding pass, you'll get a map of the airport. I bet that doesn't work for Cardiff Airport or Bristol Airport.
I think they did interior maps. Again, that's already been released. It just, like I say, it just feels like they've just wrapped up some stuff they've already got.
Yeah, I can't disagree. They then went on to Apple Pay, which actually outside of the US is savagely uninteresting. That it's still largely for Americans and forgettable for the rest of the world. And you get loyalty points and pay by installments, but they've never rolled this out anywhere else. And well done, if you're American, and this is a feature you were looking for. Yeah,
we don't get cash back on our Apple purchases, do we?
We absolutely do not. Moving on, they moved to gaming. There's a new app called Games. They spent a long time thinking that one up, I think.
Yeah, and what they've done here then is they've taken, the library of all your games you've ever downloaded. They've taken the arcade app tab out of the App Store and put it in there, which it makes sense they've done this. But again, they're just largely using stuff they've already got. But there wasn't anything major on games. There was no major, we're doing this, we're partnering with these, we're bringing all these games. We've hired the head of Xbox or PlayStation to make gaming on Apple the premium experience. Or an experience would be good.
An experience would be good. So in the Games app, there's updates and events, there's recommendations, buy more games. There's a library just for games, so you can update your games within that instead of having to go to the App Store, I presume, or launch them from there. But that's...
But that makes sense, doesn't it? Because it's a bit like your music. If you use Apple Music, you've now got games in the same way, or Apple TV. You've got the Do Stuff Now, the subscription button, the library button. You kind of have all those now, so it does make sense they've taken that model and applied it to all their properties.
I suppose, but how long have they had a Game Center app? How long have they had Apple Arcade as a separate tab inside of the App Store anyway? This just feels like this is table stakes, isn't it?
Yeah, this is nothing. They've done nothing exciting here.
Where's the integration with PlayStation Live or Xbox Live or the Nintendo Store or something for those that, for people who want to have
cross-platform gaming maybe?
Yeah, exactly. If you get Fortnite, you can play it on your Nintendo, you can play it on your Sony, you can play it on your Xbox, you can play it on your PC.
That would be amazing if they swallowed that pill and said, right, Fortnite is coming, you're going to be a cross-platform game, Apple are going to bless it, you're going to have all the events in the app, like really just lean into that. But obviously that's never going to happen.
That would have been a win for them, particularly as they've got enhanced controller support across the platforms as well. That would have been a big win.
It would have been a big win for them, and it also would have demonstrated to developers that Apple is grown up and they've swallowed a pill. Even if they didn't publicly acknowledge that they've swallowed it, they could have done something, but they did nothing instead.
Absolutely nothing. So that was the Games app. They then went on to Visual Intelligence. I almost fell asleep during this section, I got to say. So Visual Intelligence has been extended to the iPhone screen. This is a blatant copy-ish of Google's Circle to Search thing. So on an Android phone, supported Android phone, you can take a picture of something, you can draw a thing around it, a circle around it, and it will go off to Google and search it for you, tell you what it is, tell you what the instrument is, all that kind of stuff. In Apple land, now you just take a screenshot of it and then you can get some Apple Intelligence. It's Visual Intelligence features built in. I thought it was nice they used Mastodon and Ivory as their social media app of choice. That they got a brownie point from me for that.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. But again, they're not showing us anything new and exciting here. Have you used Visual Intelligence?
No, I switched it off.
I even turned on the little widget because I thought maybe I use, you can have it in Control Center because you and I don't have the dedicated camera button because we have the iPhone 15. I've never used it, I must confess. I'm not sure my wife even knows she's got it.
Yeah, I think that's a thing. My daughter has it on her phone, and it's exactly the same. I've never heard her say, "Oh, Visual Intelligence is a terrific thing." And again, as with all the Apple Intelligence features, I'm not missing this on my phone.
Agree with you.
I guess I'm going to have to turn it all on if I install the beta. We'll have that discussion right to the end. But yeah, what else? They worked across apps and it also has ChatGPT integration. Good.
Yeah, but again, no Gemini mention. Very bizarre.
No. It will also come with an API for devs to tap into it as well. And this is better. The fact that they kept mentioning that there was an API for devs for lots of these features, about blooming time, frankly.
What, at their developer conference?
Yeah, you would hope so, wouldn't you?
Yes, agreed. No, it was good. It was a slow keynote, though. I think they didn't quite get the pacing very good this week.
Yeah, it felt really stretched out. That was it for the iPhone.
Yeah, so the iPhone, in my eyes, I don't know. I'm going to say okay. Yeah. I'm not overly. I'm installing the beta, but I'm not overly excited by it.
So you've given it away, Chris. You've given it away.
Oh, sorry.
We'll talk about that at the end. Way to build tension in an audio podcast.
But will I install it on other things?
Well, we'll have that discussion at the end. Moving on, WatchOS 26, leaping up from, I don't even know what we were on WatchOS, 6, 8, 10, 11. Cool. Now it's 26. Also liquid glass everywhere. I was severely, I'm going to bury the lead and I'm going to build some tension, severely underwhelmed with WatchOS 26.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I thought we would have, the watch over the last 3-4 years has kind of gone a bit the way of the iPad, where it's just very iterative, nothing very exciting's come out on the watch. I know they did a bit of a redesign a couple of years ago, but if nothing really's happened, which considering they're one of the leading watch manufacturers now, loads of people have got them, but they're just doing so little with it. It's a bit weird, if I'm being honest with you.
It's rubbish. So what we get is Workout Buddy, which is an AI thing that sits in the background and gives you vocal encouragement.
Just on those two things you've said, if I had a watch, that would not be happening.
So it examines your current and previous exercise data and gives you that voiceover. And in the example they gave, their televised example of why you'd want to use this, twice it said you're crushing it. Get out there and crush this run. And the lady running came to the end and it said, you really crushed it. And are there no other sort of verbs you can apply to, superlatives you could apply to running?
It's just got crushed. What happens when you don't crush it? They just go, you're rubbish.
Yeah, you suck.
You suck.
Try harder next time. It's I'm sorry, that's lame, frankly.
Yeah, I saw this bit. I must confess, I missed most of watch as I had to do parental duties with my family. But I don't think I missed anything. Is what I think you're going to tell me.
Well, and I've just remembered for the YouTube viewers to flip to the WatchOS tab. That's what they talked about. Here's your workout features. Workout Buddy will tell you things like that was your fastest 5K ever, or this segment's better than you've done it before. But they've been so underplaying any intelligence abilities within the workout app for all the data they collect on your heart rate, your steps, your sleep, your exercise activity, everything that's in there, your temperature, your sats for your pulse ox for everywhere else in the world that's not America. They've got an awful lot of real-time data on me. I wear my watch all the time.
It feels like they don't want to advise you. And I've heard others say about this and so what? So what? I've done this. What does this mean for me? Is this good? Is this bad? Yeah. And I wish Apple would do more with it. They must have so much data on people.
Yeah, line goes up. Is that good? This is a change. Is that good or is that bad? And like you say, I understand on one level their fear about, if they give some advice and people come to harm as a consequence, but why record it then? You got to give some indication whether there's at least positive or negative.
Which is kind of why I stopped wearing it, because I wasn't getting any advice, but equally I wasn't going back and looking at any of the trending data. So that's why I've never missed having an Apple Watch.
Anyway, Workout Buddy sounds really annoying and patronizing, and I wouldn't turn it on. There's a new layout also for the Workout app. There's integrated playlists with Apple Music. Okay, what about Spotify?
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. That they feel like they need to have an option there.
Yep, and the idea is it looks at your workout. So if you're on a run, it plays like a really high energy track. What if you don't want a really high energy track? What if you don't want it mixed that way? What if I want to listen to my podcast? I mean, I presume there's a way to do it, but it just felt like they're sort of pushing the benefits of Apple Intelligence, which have still to be proven.
Yeah, I'm not even sure it's going to be really Apple Intelligence, is it? But there you go.
Yeah. There was also new Smart Stacks. Even when you had a watch, did you use the Smart Stack?
Nope, it was rubbish.
It is, and it remains rubbish, and I don't think this has made it any better. There's enhanced notifications, so it can automatically adjust notifications based on ambient noise. If you're in a quiet room, it'll only give you a little quiet ding on your wrist. It's off. I want it off. I don't want it ever to make the decision about how loud a notification can be.
Completely agree. I don't want noises coming out of my devices.
Absolutely not. There's a new wrist flick gesture to silence notifications, but they're already silenced.
That sounds quite an annoying gesture just based upon that name.
There's translation within the Messages app, and you can have smart backgrounds as well. And then there's going to be notes for Apple Watch. So great. How'd you I guess you dictate into it with Siri?
I guess it's useful if you want to look something up, but that's not an input device.
I mean, if you're out running and all you've got with is your sim-enabled smartwatch, Apple Watch, then okay. But you're not going to dictate a very long note to your watch, I wouldn't have thought.
No, it seems an odd one that they brought over.
It does. And that was it for WatchOS. They flew through WatchOS and they moved to tvOS.
Which again, I was gutted I missed tvOS because it's one of my favourite OSs. And there isn't a page for us to look at for tvOS, annoying.
There isn't a page for us to look at for tvOS, which sort of kind of shows the amount of attention they spent on it. Chris didn't get a lot of time to look at the notes before we started the podcast, and I have 4 bullet points for tvOS, so let's just go through it really quickly. There's liquid glass for tvOS, which looks stunningly annoying, that they've got little sort of specular highlights and things glinting in the little visual icon buttons while your content is playing.
Oh no, that's not good, because in fairness to tvOS, I love tvOS, and I think actually it's been very good at not having stuff in your way when you're watching a film and you pause it. I always think I quite like that design.
Hold on, I've just thought of something. I'm going to briefly break out of this. Was there any mention about captive Wi-Fi?
No, there wasn't, and that was like a dead cert, wasn't it? You're quite right.
Yeah, we should have been talking about that within the iOS section, but it wasn't there.
So for listeners, that's where if you sign up to a captive network, where you have to enter passwords and stuff, that it would propagate to all your devices, and you wouldn't have to do it. But that wasn't mentioned. Maybe it just wasn't deemed an exciting feature, or maybe it's not in there.
Maybe it was in the bento box thing of all the features. We missed it.
Or maybe that's when they tell somebody to flush out the leakers.
Yeah, maybe. One thing that is there across, if you've got multiple Apple TVs, is unified sign-in. So if you don't sign into Netflix once on one box, it should just sign in across all of them. That's quite good.
Oh, no, that is good, because occasionally it does have a moment and it forgets your logins, which is annoying. But that's good.
That's quite good. There was a lot of Apple TV ads. They basically went through every upcoming show for Apple TV and spent too much time on it.
That sounds familiar.
Yep. And then lyrics to sing along with your phone to Apple Music on your TV for some reason.
I thought the Apple TV already did lyrics.
It does lyrics, but now you can turn it into a crap karaoke box.
Well, if I was doing karaoke, it would be awful.
Maybe your kids would really appreciate that. I don't know. But it routes the audio from your phone out the speakers of the TV as well.
Okay.
Isn't that
clever,
a feature it's a feature you always wanted on your Apple TV?
It's amazing that they haven't got bigger fruit to do, or lower hanging fruit than they can a karaoke thing.
Where's the Netflix announcement that you've got that integration into the,
That's the one.
That's the one. So that was it for tvOS. Moving quickly on.
I'm a little gutted. That's what I'm going to say on that. I thought there'd be more, but I will install it later. I'll have a look at it later.
I knew you'd be upset. Look, you're giving it all away, Chris.
I know, I'm awful. Worst podcaster in the world.
macOS 26, all the way up from 15.
15. We were on 15 before.
Yeah, we stayed on 10 for 11 years, and now we're on 26.
Yeah, I must confess, I was kind of hoping they were going to drop the name, just have the number. because I just think that having a name and a number just confuses me.
So in case we haven't said, it's macOS Tahoe, which is a nice resort for rich people to go in California. A bit of a theme here with some of the things that are going on. But yeah, it looks very pretty. Good name. Easy to pronounce and spell than Sequoia.
At least I can spell this one. This is a good name for a dyslexic person.
All the stuff we've already mentioned. So it's got the liquid glass. It's got all the backgrounds and messaging. It's got some of your call screening. No, I'll come at that in a minute. It's got a transparent menu bar now, which I'm not sure I'm going to like very much. That there's absolutely no sort of color. That and the notch are going to get even more confusing.
I think it's one of those ones we need to see it, because the screen, it's not looking great in the screenshots, I must confess.
Yeah, it really doesn't. You now have more ability to customize your folders, so you can put emoji in your folders as well as sort of renaming them and giving them colors. You could already give them colors, but now you can put emoji in there too, and you can customize icon colors as you can on the phone. So if you want a particular icon theme, you want every icon on your computer to be blue, you can have that now.
I still don't get that feature, but anyway, maybe that's me. So I came in back at this point, so I did step away briefly. I was quite excited by the Mac because I've started using my Mac more. Now I'm doing a different job, and I'm really enjoying using the Mac. There are some things I've been less excited about, as I've discussed with you. Maybe we'll pick that up another day. But I thought there's going to be loads on the Mac, but it feels like we had a whistle-stop tour, and most of it is what they'd already announced.
Yeah, the most exciting feature I'll talk about in a second, but let's quickly flick through a couple of these. So there's continuity, so live activities will come to your Mac now as well. If you've got something running on your phone, then you'll get that as a live activity. So if you've ordered your Uber or something like that, it will tell you how far away that is potentially within the menu bar as a live activity. That's quite nice. It's a quality of life thing. It's not going to change the world. The phone app comes to the Mac now officially, so you can actually properly make calls and things like that rather than bringing up your phone in continuity mode, or it's not called continuity mode, iPhone mirroring mode. So you'll actually have that, and all the sort of call screening features and things come to that too. And it has all the stuff like translation and blah 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 that's been built into it as well, backgrounds, blah. Great, I mean, you can see I'm struggling for excitement for this. I use my phone as a phone and my Mac as a Mac, so I really do struggle to get excited about this stuff.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you here. I don't get enough phone calls that I would have this on my Mac, but I can kind of see why they've done it, but it feels like 10 years too late, if I'm being honest. But I don't know, maybe there was a big infrastructure reason why they couldn't do this.
Yeah, I can't argue with you. They then went to shortcuts. You can now automate automations, which I thought was an amazing thing to say on a stage. We can automate an automation. Okay, it's a bit, it's a bit
weird.
Inception. Yeah,
Inception. Very good.
There's intelligent actions, so you can also summarize text within a shortcut action. You can use private cloud compute for your own LLM. You can feed your own documents into the on-device LLM. So if you run Olama or one of these models, you can already do that on any computer. It doesn't have to. But what Apple are promising are using the private cloud compute of your known documents within iCloud, blah, blah. So maybe that will be good. I am vaguely interested to see how well that works. Given the limitations of Apple Intelligence, I don't have a lot of faith in it, but you never know.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. I think this is the problem they've now got with Apple Intelligence. They need to rebuild our faith in it, if they ever are going to rebuild it.
Yep. And better search. And then they moved on to the most interesting bit for me, which were Spotlight enhancements.
No, I did miss this, actually, I must confess. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do here.
So do you use Spotlight?
Yep, all the time.
Okay, I don't. I immediately disable it and turn on Alfred or Raycast or one of the better tools, because Spotlight is slow, misses things, and doesn't have sensible interactions for things like, in both Spotlight and Alfred, I can say, don't search with Google, don't search with this. I can set a keyword, so if I want to use a Google Scholar search, in both of those engines, I can type GS, and it'll immediately go to the web and search using Google Scholar, or Kagi, or Yahoo, or DuckDuckGo, or whatever. You can have far more clever interactions. You can launch ChatGPT from within it. They're far more flexible tools than what Spotlight gives you. And Spotlight is slow, apart from anything else. If you install an app, and then go and try and launch it immediately in Spotlight, does it work?
I probably don't install that many apps, I must confess, but I've never not used Spotlight.
I think you've got a way to come, but maybe you don't need to, because you should probably try this out. But what they're promising here is better Spotlight, effectively. So they've been looking at Raycast and Alfred and these other apps, and now they're going, okay, so Spotlight now has intelligent suggestions. So as you start typing, it will complete in a more sensible way. You'll be able to launch iPhone apps from directly within Spotlight. You can do system and app actions like with a shortcut, and they called it quick keys. You could type SM, which is like what I was talking about for the Google Scholar search there, and integrate it directly within the Spotlight. So again, for the podcast viewers, if you're looking at this at the moment, you can see this sort of critical phrases that appear much like a shortcut if you've ever launched one of them. Send, let's meet at the studio too, and you can name recipients within the Spotlight. So it's a more flexible system where you have integrations built into Spotlight and not just what Apple give you. You can sort of, I believe from what they said, sort of enhance it a lot more. So you can do more with your fingers on the keyboard and less with your hands on the mouse.
Okay. That sounds quite good, and they should be doing this. And I always used to use it on the iPad as well. I always used to use Command Space to do everything on the iPad. So maybe I don't know if they've announced this for the iPad, but it sounds quite good.
It's a lot more flexible, and sort of the best example of the demo they gave is they had a document open in Pages with a picture on it, and they said remove the background on Spotlight, and it did it inside of Pages. So it's sort of aware of the app that you're using when you do it. You don't need to go and find the keyboard shortcut within Pages to do the remove background function. They launched it from just Spotlight by hitting Command Space while that app was in the foreground. I thought I quite like that. That's because I always forget how to remove background image in Pages or Keynote or something like that. So the ability to do that kind of thing or compose an email based on something I'm looking at the screen at the moment is actually quite powerful if it works.
If it works, yeah, it sounds good in principle, but again, probably one we need to play with.
So the biggest thing though is there's a clipboard history in Spotlight now. Woo!
Is this just on the Mac?
Yes.
So there's clipboard history on the Mac?
Yes.
Not anywhere else?
No.
Okay.
I sense your disappointment oozing through the screen, Chris.
It just feels like if you're going to do it, with all the tech and skill and power, you do it everywhere because you haven't done it for the last 20 years. So why wouldn't you now do it everywhere? But it just seems odd they brought it to Mac first. But maybe this is, we've got it on the Mac and then, the shoe will drop next year and it will come everywhere else.
Possibly. I mean, I've had to install an app for keyboard history, for clipboard history for the last, how long have I been? Since System 8.6.
Wow, okay. This is what I mean. They've waited that long to do it. So why haven't they just done it everywhere?
I'm trying to think. That's got to be 25, something like that, years. 25 or 26 years of Mac usage, and I've had to install an app for clipboard history.
Yeah, that's mad, isn't it?
It'll take me a lot to drag Mackie out of my hands, previous app of the week, listeners. Mackie out of my cold dead hands. But if this actually works as advertised and I don't need to install third-party stuff, that's quite a good thing.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there.
So that's good. And then App Intents API for devs. So that interaction I'm talking about the app that's in the foreground and being able to shortcut it within Spotlight, that's what the App Intent is for. It will allow developers to build that into their apps relatively straightforwardly.
Yeah, it sounds quite good, doesn't it?
It does. That encompasses quick keys, don't need to go over that again, and then the Games app comes to the Mac as well, presumably only for games you've bought off the App Store, though, not for Steam.
And I think I got this right. They said for all your games that you have on your Mac, and it was just like, and this is where Apple, it would be good if they were the bigger person in the room and opened it up.
Yeah, they're missing a trick here, aren't they? There's very few games really available for the Mac in the great scheme of things. They bring more all the time, or at least they claim to bring more all the time. They've updated the graphics engine as well, which is Metal. It's up to Metal 4 now, so that means games on Mac will run quite well. Still no support for graphics standards like Vulkan, which would enable all the games that work on Linux to just work on Mac as well, in the same way there was no support for OpenGL previously. So they're missing a trick with stuff like this. There should be a Metal to Vulkan, integration, which means all those Windows compatible games that run on your Steam Deck, run on those devices, could just run on Mac if Apple actually supported those graphics libraries.
Why is it not Metal 26?
Because it's Metal 4. Maybe they'll bring it to Metal 26 next year. 27 next year.
Just to, like if they're going to do it, why not do it everywhere? But there you go.
Equally, I doubt very much that we'll have the iPhone 26 this year.
I'm curious on that one. I'm curious.
We shall see, I guess. That was it for macOS. When I talk about it, it doesn't seem like much. The only thing I'm excited about is Spotlight.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. Like now I've started using the Mac. I do want to see what the look and feel is. And what we're not talking about, and because we don't know yet, is there's possibly some other little bits that they've done that haven't been publicised yet, but will come out in the coming days when people start playing with it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There was a demo for an app called Sky, which looked far more pervasive and interesting, that we talked about a couple of weeks back, I think. This isn't that. All these app intents and all the Spotlight stuff isn't that. There's no true intelligence being added to your desktop here. There's some tweaks and things like that. So with my reserved hat back on, we'll see how this goes. And as you say, maybe there's more to come. The other shoe's got to drop yet. I probably not. If there was a big headline feature like that, they'd have shown it off.
Yeah, they would have shown it off, and sure, it feels like they're going to buy this Sky company, surely.
Well, ironically, Sky was made by the ex-developers of Shortcuts.
Which have already been acquired by Apple and then obviously left at some point, except this next company. So it does feel like that should happen because Apple is so far behind with it, aren't they?
Let's blitz through Vision OS because this isn't going to take very long. So Vision OS 26 gets widgets, which they actually look quite cool. You know, you can leave widgets around in your real workspace. So you can put a clock widget next to your actual clock on your mantelpiece and it'll stay there.
I thought these looked amazing. I'll be honest with you. They look so good. I am Vision OS curious, but I think it's hard for you and I to talk about Vision OS a lot because I've used it, but for 20 minutes in an Apple store, you know, and so I think it's hard to talk about it, but it did look good. I really like the look of it.
Yeah, but with my super cynical hat on, is it worth spending £3,500 for a widget that you can get on your Mac, your phone, or your iPad?
It's definitely not. I'm sorry, it's not worth that. And also, this is a person sat home working in a shed on his own. I think if I shut myself off the world even more than I already am, it's not going to do me any good.
This is it. It's A, it's antisocial, and B, it's a widget. You know, it might be the coolest looking widget in the world, but I'm not dropping that amount of money on a widget.
No, me neither. I am really curious by it, and if it was 1,500 quid, even though there's a lot, I would have probably gone for it.
Yeah, 1,500 quid's not $3,500. So, but moving on, it also gets liquid glass. It gets all the translation, messaging, background features that all the other things we've already seen.
Well, it kind of already had liquid glass. This is the one that's then been retrospectively applied to everything else, isn't it?
Yeah. It gets spatial scenes. It gets some enterprise features, so you're able to share one Vision Pro amongst many employees, so you can lock away private data. The example they gave is if you have medical records on one, then it's only allowed within a particular group or a particular person within that. I'm really not sure many enterprises are using Apple Vision Pros.
I don't think they are, but I wonder whether Apple's going, look, we're not shifting these. Why don't we try and pitch them to enterprises that have got the money? Yeah. So I wonder if that's why they're leaning into that a little bit. They kind of did it with the iPhone, didn't they? They started off getting into users' hands. Then they quite early on made it enterprise ready by supporting Exchange. So I wonder if that's why they're trying to aim for a little bit of this. Like, what's stopping enterprises buying it? This is, you know, the Meta Quest is aimed at the home user. If this is going to be a more commercial product, what do they need to tick off? And that's obviously one of the things.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. Related story. Next week we might talk about I took a trip to a toy store to buy a thing. And they had a lot of Meta Quests in there. And they looked to be shifting quite well. You know, there were people interested in them when I was there. That's the difference between selling a 300 quid device and a £3,500 one.
You can even get some Meta Quest for £200 because I have teenage children, as you know, and some of their friends are picking up these devices very cheaply. Interestingly, both my children aren't that fussed. I think they're a bit like me. They're not that keen on being shut off from the world.
Fair enough. They announced some new accessories integrations. So there's some Logitech Pencil where you can draw in VR/AR.
I thought it looked quite cool.
I guess so. And then last but not least, they've announced Sony VR controllers as well, which was a rumor that has come true. Sony are able to shift those VR controllers that people aren't buying for the PSVR 2.
How many people are going to buy a Vision Pro and a PSVR 2 set of controllers? That's like $4,000.
Well, here's the thing with all of this stuff, though. If you have the killer app, like Excel used to be the killer app for people to buy computers, people will buy and spend ridiculous amounts of money if it makes their life better in whatever way is quantifiable to them.
You need that crazy use case.
There ain't that use case with the Vision Pro, Apple. You got to make something that people want to buy it for, and widgets ain't it.
Agreed, and I'm not sure what is it.
Yeah, but that's not it. There was also camera and editing integrations, and I think that was about it for Vision OS. Should we do the exciting one?
Yeah, let's get on the iPad, your favourite.
My absolute favourite. So iPad OS 26 gets liquid glass. Woo!
Woo! Nobody saw that coming.
Nobody saw that coming. They hadn't built a story here at all. It gets all the other stuff we've already talked about, so the messaging, live translation, blah, blah, blah. But the big feature is, go on, Chris, you can take this one.
Well, no, before we do the big feature, does it get the phone app if the Mac's got the phone app? Because, like, when I used to work on my iPad, I wouldn't have minded the phone app on it. It would have been quite useful, like, you know, listen to voicemail and what have you, but I'm not seeing it. So I just struck me as odd that it doesn't have the phone app when the Mac's going to get it. And obviously this is built literally on the same, software as the iPhone. So it just seemed odd to me they didn't mention that. But anyway, back to the big feature.
What's the big feature?
Multitasking done properly, done like the Mac, I think is what we're going to say.
Well, That's exciting. They called it multitasking, but what it was at this point, it was a new windowing system. Is that fair to say?
They did call it a new windowing system, but they should have said, you know that stuff you love on the Mac so much? We should have done this originally. We brought it to the iPad, and we've literally just deleted all that code and limitations that we had, and it's way better. And I think they've done a good job, and I think they did. I can't remember the lady's name, but the lady who introduced it, I thought she did a great job of just summarising it really succinctly. Of you now get the 3 menu traffic light buttons off the Mac that you like, and they do this, and you can have more than 4 apps on the screen at once. And they've just got rid of some of those annoyances where the iPad kept clearing your space rather than going, no, I've got my space, I want it, just bring the next app on top. And now it does that like the Mac does. This looks really good to me.
Yeah, so I mean that's it. It's you can now have windowing. You can open and close and maximize them. There's the same widget you get on the Mac for that. What closed actually means in that context, I'm not sure yet. We'll need to get our fingers on it. It has overlapping windows. You can overlap them as you want. Who knew? What have we got now? Almost 50 years of computing with Windows and things like that. Maybe 40 years of computing with Windows and things. And now you can use an iPad like you can every other computer.
Yeah, they should. What they should have done is either do what the Mac did, or do it in a really touch-friendly way so you don't have overlapping windows and it all tiles itself automatically. But they kind of went somewhere in the middle, and they just got it completely wrong. This looks amazing. They've also made the mouse pointer more like a mouse pointer, where it's it's more precise rather than being the round blob we had before. And if you move the mouse pointer to the top of the screen, you get a menu bar. So it really is gone full circle with the Mac, and I'm super excited to try it out.
Yeah, I think this is all good stuff. The big question for me is how well it backgrounds, because giving you windowing is one thing. We're coming to it. There is a certain amount of background tasks coming, but that's going to be the real difference here, that you're able to window with it and you're able to treat it more like an actual computer rather than a toy that stops doing a thing the second you more or less go away from it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the devil's in the detail. But I was already using my hamstrung iPad to work. This, to me, just looks brilliant, and I'd actually be quite excited to use it.
Where's the terminal app, Chris? You asked that during the thing. Where's the terminal app?
Well, because they tick so many boxes. This section was just insane. They've also been working on it for a long time. And they've done the new look. They've done the multitasking, which people have been asking for a long time. There's a lot of talk about it being Stage Manager too, so I didn't have my hopes up. But actually, they didn't really call it Stage Manager at all. And I think they've nailed it. So really impressed.
Yeah, there was one hint that that they've improved Stage Manager and it works with external displays and yada yada yada. But I'm cautiously optimistic about this. There was a nod to tiling as well, so you can flip a tiling mode and it will tile your windows across the thing. You can expand them to. I don't know if it will go up in stages the way that it used to, or just actually able to resize a window to any sort of size that you want it to. Again, we need to get our hands on this and see what it's like. But I'm cautiously optimistic that this is going to improve the iPad quite a lot.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this is looking really good. The bit that did blow my mind, though, was towards the end of this segment, they said, and it works on all iPads. Because if you remember when they brought it out originally, it was like, this is M1 only, we can't make it work on others. And this is on all iPads, so even ones with very limited memory, much slower chips. And I thought that's amazing, because they've obviously done what the Mac's done. We know these windows can exist on a Mac. So they've obviously thrown quite a lot of some of the deep-rooted stuff that exists on the iPad to make this work. And I applaud them for doing it, because that's probably the bigger decision of, do they carry on down the road that they were doing the wrong road, or do they rip it all up and start again? It felt like they've done the harder option, to be fair to them.
I'm not seeing iPad Pro M1 on this list.
I think that's the 12.9-inch third generation or newer. They're not named very well at all. So it will work on the iPad 1.
Okay.
I think it might even work on the one before the M1.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's good. I'd like to see the list of all the devices no longer supported. Like, is the iMac Pro still a supported device on Mac OS? It's not anymore, is it? You're shaking.
No, I don't believe so. If you go to the Mac OS page, I think it's
is the iPhone XR gone?
Yes, the X. I'm gutted. The XR's gone. So it's iPhone 11 or newer, or SE2.
I think let's pull that out for next week. I'll let you make a little note in the show notes for next week for us to go back and talk about what devices are no longer supported, while I go on and talk about the other improvement they made, which is an improvement to the Files app. So there's a new Files app. It's the Files app we know and love, except you can sort of pin folders to the dock. You can have an open with function inside of the Files app, which is quite nice. So it won't automatically always open in Microsoft Word or Apple Pages. You can actually say always open this file with something else. And there are customizations, and you'll have a resizable Finder file window as well. So this is all good. It's not Finder though, is it? Just put Finder on there, you cowards.
I wonder, and I wondered this a while ago, would they ever make the Files app pretty good and then actually put it on the Mac as to replace the Finder to have that comparator? Because but you're going to have a point where some people are on an iPad or a phone and then they go and use a Mac and they're like, where's Files?
That makes me panic. Just the very the concept of having that crippled thing for the iPad brought to the Mac.
They should just called it Finder on the iPad, because it is, it does the files, it connects to servers. They've created another thing that's different, whereas they should have created something that's got the same name.
Maybe. Anyway, Files gets better. I'm going to have to play with it and see what that's like. But
Files has got way better, I think, to give them their dues. It looks really good.
I will defer to your experience there, because you probably used Files an awful lot more than I have. So
not that much, because I was a OneDrive person.
Yeah, but OneDrive integrated with Files, right?
I'd used the OneDrive app because it was just more reliable.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so there's things there to test. Folders in the dock, as we said, and the preview app comes to the iPad.
At last, that's been rumoured for so long. I wonder if that's going to be on the iPhone as well, the preview app.
I guess we'll see. I mean, it is interesting. In my day job, I have to download other PDF annotating apps when I'm sort of marking up papers and things like that for review. So if this is good, that's great. That throws away a whole sequence of apps that I've tried and failed with over the years. I haven't worked so well. So this could actually, just that could make the iPad more useful to me.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's the case. Maybe we can win you over.
Doubt it. They also had a big section on audio. You can now have multiple mics on there. They've got voice isolation and intelligence things on there. These are all big deals.
How long have we been waiting for this? Because we did start recording the podcast whilst I was on my iPad years and years ago. We could actually possibly do that now. How amazing is that?
Maybe we should try we'll see how that goes. Can we plug our mics into the iPad? Because the other thing you now get is local capture of video conferencing.
Well, that's what I was about to say. The fact you can locally capture your audio and save it, and you don't need to do it in a per app thing. You can just go do it in Control Center. That's quite neat. That is a system function. Very clever.
We shall see. Until it's a thing, I'm not trumpeting about it too much. And then at last, some background tasks were evidence. So the examples they gave were, if you start an export in DaVinci Resolve for the iPad, it will continue doing it as appear as a live activity. I wonder if that means you can queue them up. Can you have 2 or 3 things going at once?
Yeah, I'm curious on this one. It feels like they started this like with Safari, maybe with big downloads last year, and then they've gone on to do this now. Fantastic though, isn't it? It's Final Cut. You can now do your export. Hopefully you can background audio as well. So if you're recording, can that app just sit in the background? But they haven't got that 4 app limit. That's going to help as well. So this is huge. This are all the things, all the fundamental problems. Hopefully have been taken away with the iPad.
The last one you have to do, Apple, is allow third-party developers to sideload stuff. So I can have Python on there, or RStudio on there, or, I don't know, pick app of your choice that you're never likely to let in the App Store.
Can I have full-blown Xcode on there, please? Thank you very much.
So there's a terminal. There's things we'd like. So that was it. And then last but not least, the Journal app has broken out of the iPhone and is now available on the iPad as well.
And on the Mac, I think I saw. So insane. They've actually done what they should have done when they launched it, which is just bonkers to me. I think if you'd have said to me, we'd be talking about iPadOS 26 today, and they'd have done all these things, the improved, fixed multitasking, hopefully, sorted out the Files app, sorted out audio, sorted out background in, I wouldn't have believed we'd get all of them, but they've done it, to be fair, which is quite amazing.
They then moved to a little section on developers. Obviously, this is where they'll go into far more detail in the State of the Union, which is what they're doing now. There was a lot of push on app intents for obviously all the Spotlight integrations and everything we've talked about. Foundations models framework, which I think is to do with ChatGPT and stuff like that. There's Swift improvements and Swift UI improvements, and then a lot of stuff about improving Xcode through linkage with things like ChatGPT. So and I can't remember what the thing was they announced last year, but there was going to be an AI integration with Xcode that didn't come to pass. So now they're just going to do it with ChatGPT in the same way that a bunch of these code editors have been allowing you to do for the last 6 months.
And it looks good. What they've done looks good. I must confess, code completion in Xcode, which I've been living in for the last 2 weeks, fantastic. So it's very clever already without whatever new hotness is coming this year. So they are doing a really good job there.
So there you go. I think that is WWDC25 from top to tail.
Yeah, so what do you think? What's your hot take in hindsight of the whole event?
My hot take in hindsight, I think most of it I was fairly meh about. They brought me around a little bit with iPadOS because that's something that is dearly needed, this kind of stuff. Let's face it, if this had happened 5 years ago, imagine where we'd be on the iPad now.
Yeah, they've been too slow to iterate on the iPad, which is frustrating, I think, because the iPad would probably serve as a great laptop to a lot of people because it is, it hasn't got some of the legacy craft, has it? So it would be a great laptop to a lot of people, but it just hasn't had enough ability, and there's always been that balance. Whereas some of this has shown some promise.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic about iPad. Some of the rest of it I remain to be convinced about. I'm not terribly impressed with the updates to either iOS or macOS, frankly.
Well, I'm amazed they've invested so much effort in the iPad, where they sell exponentially more iPhones. So the iPhone's always been the starlet, hasn't it? So yeah, it's quite amazing, really.
And with a couple of exceptions, I think it's really good that they're supporting devices as far back as they are with some of these things. This could have been the year that all Intel Macs were killed off, and I presume there's still a couple of them kicking around in there.
That's a good question. I know the Mac Pro is the very expensive Mac Pro from 2019.
There's still Intel support. That's fine. There's still some Intel support then.
So iMac is 2020 or later, Mac Pro 2019 or later, Mac Mini 2020, MacBook Pro 2020, but it's the 4-port Thunderbolt 3 version.
So that's just before they switch to the M1.
So Intel doesn't feel like it's long for this world.
This is the last year for Intel computers, I'd say.
I would possibly, maybe the Mac Pro would hang on because it was just so stupidly overspec'd, but I don't know.
There we go. Highlight of the show, Chris?
I think iPadOS. So chuffed they've done it, but I'm annoyed I don't use it as much as I was. But I'm enjoying it, and I always like WWDC because I don't usually need to spend any money, and I can download all this stuff and have a play with it, so which makes me happy.
For me, I'm fairly happy with most of this. I would have liked them to hold their hands up and say our fault on a couple of things. I think that would have been corporately good and won them a little bit of goodwill back.
I would completely agree with you that it would have been nice to see them eat a little bit of humble pie, even if they did it in an Apple way. But they elected to do none of that and just plough on, which is a bit disappointing. But maybe they do something in the Developer State of the Union, which I'll probably watch tomorrow. On the whole, I thought software-wise it was a good event, but it would have been nice to just have a bit more humility from them. Yeah,
they've taken a lot of liberties with us over the years. Us as enthusiasts, developers, governments and regulators. So yeah, I'd give it a C+, I think, as an event.
And also, I'd agree. Yeah, I'd probably agree with you there. And you and I often end at this point, I think, where it's like, yeah, it was okay. That's our normal feeling after, because they can't fix everybody's problems, can they?
They can't, but corporately, CSR-wise, they could take a little bit of responsibility. So we'll leave that there, and we'll finish on. So what devices are you going to install on?
Well, whilst we've been talking, my iPhone magically updated.
Impressive.
So it's on my iPhone because I find you've got to have it on there to play it, and I must confess I'm not loving the double bars at the bottom of my music app. They look awful, which is a bit disappointing. So I've installed it on my iPhone while we're talking. I haven't played with it. For me, I'll probably do my MacBook to play with it on the Mac, but I will not be doing my studio so that I can carry on podcasting with you, because Audio Hijack that we use to capture the source files does not like it if you're on a beta. They normally come out partway through the summer, I think, and go, you can now install the beta. It's settled down, which is fair because they're quite a low-level program. And what you don't want is everybody installs it on day one. You've not even had time as a developer just to see what it looks like. So when they support it and we're comfortable with it, then I'll probably have a look at it on the Mac Mini.
So MacBook Pro, iPhone, iPad?
Oh yeah, it's already on the iPad. I'm a lot more comfortable with it though, because I am not working at the moment, so there's no apps that if they stop working on my iPad would be the end of the world. Whereas you and I would have gone back many years, and like Outlook doesn't launch, and it's like, oh no, I can't work now. So I've got not that problem this year, so I went for it.
And last but not least, Apple TVs.
I am going to try Apple TV, probably on the one we have one up in our bedroom, and that's the one least used. So I'll try that first, just make sure it's all okay, because like we use the Apple TV all the time.
Fair enough. So for me, it's going to go on the phone. This is a mistake. I've got a big trip coming up in 2 weeks' time. The
Why did you do that?
Oh, what the hell. So it's going on there. If it shows any weirdness between here and there, I'm going to flip over to my Android and I'll go back to that and I'll just travel with my Android because it'll be more reliable.
So when I downloaded the phone just now, it's 25 gigabytes, which is huge. The iPad was smaller, so I don't really know what's going on.
Well, it's been downloading to my phone while we've been talking, so we'll see how that goes. You obviously got it a lot quicker than me, which perplexes me.
Which is odd because I remember the years when you had really good internet and I very much did not, and I had to do one at a time, so I didn't max out my line. And the other thing I'm going to play with is Xcode, because I can try out the new beta of Xcode and see what's in all the new hotness. And do you know what the new Xcode's called?
What's it called?
Xcode 26.
There you go. Align all of the things. So it's going on my phone. It's going to go on my iPad. It's not going on my studio, my Mac Mini here, because that's our studio computer, and it's good to have one stable computer in the house.
Agreed.
I might put it on one of my laptops, but I'll see how I go about that. I'm not 100% convinced.
No, I think maybe let me give you a bit of feedback first on how ropey it is before you go for it.
Though I will say, it's a lot easier these days than it used to be because almost everything works in a web browser these days. And as long as you've got a web browser, you can get your email, you can do your banking, you can do all that kind of stuff. So it's not the disaster it was once upon a time.
No, and in fairness to Apple, I think the betas are so much. I wouldn't recommend people install them. We should do that.
I was just about to say, don't install the betas, folks.
They generally
Wait
are
at least for the public beta and possibly wait for the actual release.
And the public betas are in July, so they're not that far away.
Yeah. I think we can call that a show, Chris.
I think so. It was really good. Thanks, Rod. And if anybody wants to get in contact with us, as I quickly bring up the screen I need, Rod is at g5maniac@mastodon.scot. He's also on Blue Sky, and he's at g5maniac@bsky.social. I'm on Mastodon, and I'm at _CJP at mastodon.social. Watch on YouTube by going to our website and clicking on the YouTube link, and the website is wakefromsleep.com. Or you can drop us an email at wakefromsleep@protonmail.com.
Talk to you next week, Chris.
Cheers, Rod.